I played a lot. That's another great thing my mom did for me. She always put me in sports, so I never had the
What
time.
sports?
Played a lot of football, a lot of basketball. Those were my
Okay.
kind of two sports.
Nice.
I played for the HP Spartans. Played for the Downey Razorbacks one year.
Oh, wow.
And then basketball at Salt Lake Park, and
Salt
then
Lake
and
Park.
karate. I did Taekwondo from 7 years old all the way to 13 years old. That showed me a lot of discipline.
Big time.
I owe a lot of my discipline to Taekwondo, starting at a young
Nice.
age. But those things also taught me how to compete, and
Right.
taught me that if I worked hard enough, I could get it done.
Yes.
Because with sports, I wasn't the most gifted one. I wasn't.
me neither.
I never really had the talent that stood out. But man, I would just outwork people in some way, somehow. I'd end up in the starting lineup.
It's true, bro.
So that taught me a lot.
As they say, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right?
100%. And I think, a lot of times when you have talent, you have arrogance.
Yes.
And when you have discipline, you're confident. There's a big difference.
Right.
Yeah,
I love
discipline
that.
gives you confidence.
I was on
Talent
your call.
gives you
I was on your Zoom
arrogance.
today. I heard you say that,
Yeah.
and I was like, I was driving, so I couldn't take it down. But now we got to record it. So
Yeah.
that's powerful. It's so true, man.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's so. At 15, you get the job, right? And you were at the call center, and that's where you started learning sales because you weren't really a sales kid. You were kind of timid, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so one of the great things that this company did, and it's why I do what I do with my company,
Right.
is they gave us leadership development, and they used to have us take mindset courses. So from 15 years old all the way to 21 years, an hour a day, every day, before I would get
Really?
on the phones, they would make me study mindset, communication skills,
Interesting.
tonalities, bring your tonality up, down, bring it down, bring it up. They used to teach us all that stuff. We used to role play for an hour. I used to have to sit in front of you for like 30 minutes, and I couldn't blink. And there'd be people trying to get me to make me laugh, and I couldn't laugh. I just had
Really?
to sit there with you, like looking.
They were ahead of their time, bro.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What is that in the 90s?
Yeah, that's late. 96 is when I got
Yes.
that job. Actually, no. What am I talking about? 94, 93 is when I got the job because I was in high school. 93.
Yeah.
So from 93 to 99, I was there. So I was there for
Interesting.
6 years, and then when I became, at 18 years old, I finally become the youngest manager in company history.
Wow.
Not because I was the most deserving, but because the 6 people in front of me that were way more talented, that had seniority over me, all got fired for doing things they weren't supposed to do. So I got my shot. So once I got my shot, I started doing pretty well for myself, and then I started to, again, you can only receive what your mind can accept.
Yes.
And my mind started to accept at that point, like, wait, maybe you are worth $100,000 a year because you're already 18 years old and you're managing people that are twice your age, that are going to college. You're making $1,000 a week, and at the time, I didn't really know anybody at 18 years old making $1,000 a week. This is in '96.
Yeah.
So my mind began to accept, like, maybe I am worth $100,000 a year, and in life you'll experience that which you're deeply convinced with. So if you're deeply convinced that you belong in poverty, you're going to have poverty. But if
Yes.
you're deeply convinced that you're going to do something great with your life, that's what you'll get. And that's why I often say you don't believe something in your heart until you experience it. So at 18 years old, I had experienced something that made me believe that I was worth $100,000 a year. I wasn't making $100,000
Right.
yet. I started making like 60 at that point.
Sure.
52 with bonuses, I was making 60. But I was like, man, I'm already making 60 at 18. That means by 21, I'm making 100. And then the other thing that happened is I became the right hand of the VP of sales and association, right? That's the other thing that builds your identity.
Yep.
You start hanging around with people that are doing better than you.
Yep.
Then you're going to start to do better.
That's why
right?
I'm here, man.
There you go. So, I start hanging out with them all the time. He's making $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I start to apply what he's teaching me. So my mind begins to accept, oh, damn, I'm doing everything he's doing. I'm just, the beautiful thing about association is you start realizing that they're not that much different than you. And you start to realize they're not that much more special than you. And if again, but if you don't hang out with those people,
Right.
you almost hold them at too much of a pedestal, and it's almost like unattainable.
Right.
But when you hang out with them, you're like, wait a minute, I can do what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
And you begin
Your
to accept, you believe, right? And that's why one of the greatest things you could do as a leader is make your juniors believe, because if you can get them to believe something, they'll manifest it.
Yes.
So that's what happened. And at 21 years old, now 3 years later, he comes into my office. He says, hey, Edwin, I'm going to start this home security company from the ground up. He says, I can't guarantee you the $70,000 a year that you make here, but if you make this work, you can possibly double, triple, quadruple what you make here.
Wow.
And, you know, the first thing I thought, well, I always say that you don't really have to be that smart to be successful, to make 100 grand or 7 figures. You just got to have common sense, and you got to have some drive.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I used. I used common sense. I said, this guy's making 250 grand a year. He's resigning because he thinks he could make $1 million in this other industry that is really untapped. I'm like, that sounds pretty reasonable. Second thing I thought was, man, this guy's going to mentor me how to start a company from the ground up.
Right.
I'm like, this is my shot at the big time. And then the third thing I thought was, I was a big dreamer. You know, at 16, 17, I would ditch 5th and 6th period. It's probably why I ended up with a 1.8 GPA from high school. But I would ditch, and I'd go to Hollywood Hills, I'd go to Beverly Hills, I'd go to Rodeo Drive, I'd look at all the clothes, and then from there I'd go to Hollywood Hills, Beverly Hills, and I was like, man, this is where I need to this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
You know, and I call that touching the dream. You know, I was touching the dream at a very young age.
Right.
And it made my subconscious figure out how to get there.
Right.
But again, you can't change something that you're not aware of.
Right.
So if you're not aware of something, how are you supposed to change it? And at the time,
it's true.
Getting out of my bubble of Huntington Park, because at Huntington Park I was living large. Right? I'm making 70 grand a year. I'm 18 years, I mean, at this point, 21 years old. Now I had moved to Southgate. So we're moving up a little bit. So we're in the nice part of Southgate now. And, but I was still in Southgate. And, you know, one of the ways that you eliminate fear is you look at the worst case scenario.
Right.
So when that decision came, I looked at the worst case scenario, which was, okay, if I fail miserably, I go from living in Southgate to Watts, which is a mile away. Like I'm only a mile away from Watts. I was living on Tweedy and Elizabeth. So I'm like,
by the park.
Further down, closer to Pacific.
Got it.
I'm right next door to Watts. I
yeah.
said, if I fail, I end up in Watts. Not that much different than the tiny little bedroom without any windows that I grew up in. But if I make this work, I end up in the big time. I end up with all the dreams.
I love it.
So everybody thought I was crazy. And then the other thing I looked at too was, I looked at, is $70,000 a year going to be available again?
Right. Oh.
And I thought to myself, yeah, $70,000 a year, that's going to be available again. Like I can get a job like that.
Yes.
But the opportunity to be mentored by the only guy I knew that was successful at the time, in an industry that was untapped, in an industry that allowed me to make the kind of money that I wanted to make, because I don't want to wait till I was 25 to make 100 grand a year. I wanted to make 100 grand by the age of 21. Remember, I became obsessed with making 100 grand by the age of 21. So I said, this is my shot. You know, and again, to make 6 figures, 7 figures a year, you just need 2 things. You need to find an opportunity that allows you to make that kind of money.
Right.
And then the second,
does it have the potential?
Yeah, does it have the potential? Because if it's got no potential, then what are you doing?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's number one, is finding that opportunity that allows you to make that kind of money. And number 2 is you need to find someone who's done it before, who's got a vested interest in your success, that's going to help you do it.
That's awesome.
And if you could do that, then the only reason you wouldn't make that kind of money is if you don't put in the effort. I'm a byproduct of that, right? I found one person. He gave me an opportunity to make way more money.
Right.
And then he took me under his wing and he showed me how to do it.
Interesting.
And then from there, but again, you don't have to be that smart.
Common sense, like you said.
Common sense and drive.
Because you were doing good at 70 for being 21, living in Southgate in the 90s, 70 grand a year. I mean, shit, you're living large in Southgate in the 90s with that, right? Especially at such a young age. But as, I think it's Tim Grover that says, you were doing good, but good is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
So you need to get outside of your comfort zone, take some risk in order to go and do great.
Yeah.
And I think most people, bro, they're just not willing to take a risk. And I heard a long time ago, sounds cliche now because so many people said it, but the biggest risk is not to take a risk.
Amen. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I say the purpose of a goal is not necessarily to accomplish it, but to become the person that actually attempts it. Right? You want to become the person, because if you never attempt it, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that never attempt it. And again, if you don't attempt it, you can't experience it. And if you can't experience it, you can't believe it. And if you can't believe it, it ain't never going to happen.
My man, that's
so
right.
it's as simple as that. You know what just came to mind right now was we were talking about 2x2.net.
Right.
And I remember I was 21 years old. I had already bought my Mercedes convertible, right? Because I wanted to be, I'm also very competitive, right? So I was always finding little ways to excite me.
Right.
And I was like, man, I want to be the first guy in Downey driving around a $100,000 car, right?
Yeah.
Because at 28, I'm like, everybody's driving a $100,000 car at 28.
Yeah.
I need to have by 21 while everybody's going to college. I'm freaking smoking them, right?
Hey guys, if you like this short clip, make sure you check out another short clip right here. And if you want to catch a full episode, click on this one. And I'll see you guys at the top or from the top.